The Atrocity in the Tropics, Unveiling the Guatemala, Syphilis, Horror. What if the healers you trusted were the ones wielding the poison? Picture this. In the steamy shadows of 1940s Guatemala, American doctors, backed by the full might of the U.S. government, deliberately infected vulnerable people with deadly diseases, turning prisons, asylums, and brothels into living laboratories of suffering. No consent, no mercy, just cold experimentation on human flesh to test cures for syphilis and gonorrhea. This isn't a forgotten chapter from a war crime tribunal. It's the Guatemala syphilis experiments, a U.S.-led nightmare from 1946 to 1948 that infected over 1,300 innocents, leaving a trail of death, madness, and generational agony. Led by the same doctor behind Tuskegee, these acts of bioterrorism were buried for decades until declassified files ripped open the truth in 2010. Join me as we descend into this abyss of ethical oblivion where the line between medicine and monstrosity vanished. The Poisoned Alliance. How a friendly partnership turned deadly. Post-World War II, the U.S. was racing to combat sexually transmitted diseases ravaging troops and civilians alike. Penicillin had emerged as a miracle cure by 1943, but questions lingered. How effective was it against syphilis, gonorrhea, and chancroid? Could prophylactics prevent infection after exposure? Enter Dr. John Charles Cutler, a U.S. Public Health Service USPHS officer fresh from similar shady work in Terre Haute, Indiana, where he experimented on prisoners. Guatemala, under President Juan José Arevalo, was eager for U.S. aid to modernize its health system, unknowingly opening the door to horror. Funded by the National Institutes of Health, NIH, and the Pan American Health Sanitary Bureau, a precursor to PAHO, the operation was greenlit with $700,000, equivalent to millions today, and involved collaboration with Guatemalan officials, like Dr. Juan Funes. But beneath the veneer of scientific cooperation lurked a racist calculus. Guatemalans, seen as expendable in an era of colonial echoes, became the perfect disposable subjects. The experiments kicked off in 1946 with grotesque efficiency. Prostitutes infected with syphilis or gonorrhea were paid to have sex with soldiers, prisoners, and mental patients, up to 60 encounters per woman in some cases, to transmit the diseases naturally. When that failed, researchers escalated. They abraded genitals with gauze, injected pus from infected sores directly into urethras, spines, or eyes, or force-fed bacterial cocktails mixed with alcohol. In the National Mental Health Hospital, patients, including children as young as 10 and those with schizophrenia, were subjected to the worst. Inoculations via spinal punctures or cisternal taps, piercing the base of the skull. Cutler's records, now declassified, detail 308 victims, 678 with syphilis, 427 with gonorrhea, 196 with chancroid and overlaps. Many were never fully treated, leading to blindness, insanity, and death. One woman, Berta, died days after an experimental injection. Another child suffered eye infections that left her scarred for life. Declassified photos of study subjects in Guatemala, faces censored to protect identities, capturing the human faces of the experiments, the victims' agony, stories of shattered lives. Imagine being a prisoner promised freedom only to be turned into a vector of disease, or a mental patient already lost in delirium, subjected to repeated invasions of your body. Declassified lab notes reveal graphic horrors. Lesions photographed like trophies, spinal fluid drawn without anesthesia, and prostitutes dubbed normal exposure. Tools. At least 83 died by 1953, though the true toll, factoring in untreated infections and congenital syphilis passed to children, is likely higher, affecting generations as the diseases spread unchecked. Survivors like Federico Ramos endured lifelong pain, their bodies riddled with sores and neurological damage. The experiments yielded little scientific value. Penicillin's efficacy was already known, but the human cost was catastrophic. A sample index card from Dr. Cutler's declassified records, documenting one of the infected subjects. If revelations like these, peeling back the layers of government-sanctioned cruelty, leave you craving more uncovers of history's darkest corners, subscribe to my YouTube channel, Behind the Veil Truths, for weekly dives into the untold. The cover-up, a web of silence and complicity. Cutler and his team knew the risks. Internal memos debated ethics but pressed on, with USPHS superiors like Dr. R.C. Arnold approving the work. Guatemalan authorities were complicit, providing access to institutions, but the U.S. held the reins. The program ended in 1948 amid funding cuts and penicillin's dominance, but records were sealed, and Cutler went on to oversee Tuskegee. For 60 years, it festered in secrecy until historian Susan Reverby stumbled upon Cutler's papers in 2010 while researching Tuskegee. The Reckoning, Apologies and Lingering Shadows. The exposure hit like a bombshell. President Obama apologized to Guatemala in 2010, commissioning a bioethics report that condemned the acts as unconscionable. A class action lawsuit by victims' families against Johns Hopkins, linked via Cutler, was dismissed in 2015, but Guatemala pursued justice through international courts. The National Archives released over 12,000 pages of Cutler's records in 2011, including lab logs and photos, a diagram from declassified documents illustrating the experimental methods used in Guatemala, the eternal stain, a warning from the past. The Guatemala experiments weren't just a medical travesty. They were a blueprint for exploitation, fueling distrust in global health initiatives and echoing in today's bioethics debates. As descendants grapple with inherited syphilis, the question haunts, how many more hidden horrors await declassification? If this journey into the heart of American imperialism's dark side has you on edge, demanding justice from the archives, subscribe to Behind the Veil Truths on YouTube. We'll keep hunting the truths power tries to bury. Who's to say what scandal we'll expose next?